Hey, today, guys, we have Kathy Board, a.k.a. Mama Daisy, on the podcast today. Welcome to 4116 West Smiley, Mama Daisy.
Thank you, Henry.
Glad you're here today. So you decided to be on the podcast?
Kind of, sort of.
So you think of Smiley Court? Give me some memories that you have of Smiley Court, Dan.
Well, I grew up in Montgomery, so I've been here all my life.
Okay.
I can remember Smiley Court just getting a bad name. It seemed like it was always something bad happening there. There was a lot of violence and things that came out in the news. And I really didn't know the people, though, so I was being a little judgmental. But Smiley Court's just always gotten a bad rap, in Montgomery.
So that's cool. You have 4116 West Smiley Day, and we'll see how things change when you're done.
Okay.
So you said earlier you grew up in Montgomery most of your whole life.
I did.
What communities did you grow up in?
I grew up in the Highland Avenue community. Went to Highland Avenue Elementary, then
Okay.
Capitol Heights Junior High, and then Robert E. Lee High School.
Cool.
Then went to AUM. So I'm
So cool. So let's explain growing up during that time period in Montgomery. Like, what are some things that were very unique about that time period? Because it seemed like you was in the same feeder pattern, the same neighborhood majority of your whole life, right?
I was.
So
yes.
how was that? Like, how does that impact you now, or how were those things growing up during that time period?
Things were good. I had a good life. I lost my father when I was only 7. He passed away. So I was raised by a single mom. It was tough, but I was very involved in church at Highland Avenue Baptist and then in Morning View Baptist, and just got in with some good Christian people. I was involved in sports and involved in cheerleading, so that kind of helped me stay grounded, with it too. And I had some wonderful mentors too, so that was huge in my life. It was having a mentor that would kind of guide me, and having a single mother, I didn't know a lot of things that were available college-wise and all. So having mentors kind of helped me find my way to AUM and get a degree and become a teacher.
So that's very interesting that you said that, because I did not know that your father died when you were 7 years old. So were you the oldest, youngest, middle child?
I was the baby.
Oh man, so you was the youngest with that scenario.
Yeah, I had a brother in college, and then one a few years ahead of me. And my brother in college actually had to quit. He had a football scholarship at Southern Miss and had to quit and come home to help raise me and my younger brother.
Wow. So by your father passed, that really impacted a lot of people.
Oh,
there.
Absolutely. My mother's health was never good after that. So we've kind of had to stick together and, raise each other a little bit. And then she passed away probably 40 years ago. So.
Yes, well. So growing up without your father, how did that impact you, or how did that be relatable to that time period? Because at that time period, mostly everybody probably had a 2-parent home, right?
Oh,
in your
absolutely.
community, that, right? So
yes.
how did that impact you growing up at that age, knowing that, your father was gone, but everybody around you kind of had their dad? So
it was tough. But I was very blessed that I had some friends whose fathers kind of took me under their wing. And like I said, I had a brother that was 13 years older than me. So I really am thankful for him coming home and being in my life. And I always say he raised me, and my other brother too, So on Father's Day, I sent them both a message telling them I appreciated them, that they took on a job they didn't ask for, but they did it well though.
So that's a blessing in disguise when you really think about it, because you were really blessed enough to have a community around you that stepped in. You talked about your church, and you talked about your brother stepping in, things that matter. So I think that's very important to know that, because a lot of people really go into this scenario thinking like, oh, well, a lot of people are raising children by themselves and things that matter, and they got it pretty tough. But you were pretty blessed to have a real strong support system around you.
I was. There were still tough times. Probably financially was one of the hardest things, living, just having one parent and, getting Social Security. But still, so many of my other friends lived in nicer houses, had nicer clothes, got vehicles when they turned 16. And I kind of missed out on all that. But, hey, if God's going to take you to it, He's going to take you through it. So,
yes, ma'am. So you mostly grew up in that part of North Montgomery, the Nile-Fest, they call it now in today's world, in North Montgomery. So I'm thinking in my head now, you went to Capitol Heights. Was the prison still over there by Capitol Heights at that time period?
Kilby?
Yes, ma'am.
I don't think so. I think it was during my elementary days. My dad actually worked at Kilby before he passed away. Yeah.
So that was very close to home then, every day.
It was.
Then.
Yeah.
So how was it growing up knowing that a prison was that close to the house? Though?
Scary, because every time there was a prison break, I was always afraid they were going to come to my house. They were going to find me and my family. So, but yeah, it was very scary. So, and I remember riding down what is now Federal Drive and all, and seeing the prisoners out in the prison yard.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah. Yeah.
Because the reason I want to bring it up, because a lot of times in today's world, people don't realize how everything was really in that area of Montgomery at one point. You know, we think about prisons now, we're thinking more now, 65, Elmore County, things that matter. But that time period, it was in the neighborhood. It was in the community where you were growing up.
That's what I'm saying. We could ride past and see the prisoners out in the yard, you know.
Wow. So how was it going to Capitol Heights Junior High at that time period?
Loved it. That was actually where I met my mentor, who is now also my second mother. She was my PE teacher. And going through Capitol Heights, I realized, you know what? I think this is what I want to do. And then I was blessed to go on to Lee and had some wonderful PE teachers there and pursue a career, you know, in it.
So what's your middle school, junior high teacher name?
Diane Lindsay. Now she's Nana.
Okay. So Coach Lindsay really is the person who kind of turned you or put you in a position of wanting to be in the education field.
Yeah, absolutely. And also she mentored me as a mother too, because I think I told you earlier, my mother health was not good.
Yes, ma'am.
So she kind of took me under her wing, and to this day we're very close. My children think it's their grandmother.
Wow.
And so we just clung together, you know.
It's kind of amazing that as I'm continuing to hear more about your story, because I think a lot of times, you know, we grow up the way we grow up, you know, circumstances happen and things happen in our lives, but I think God really gives us a lot of times what we need and not what we want. And even in the process of growing up the way you did, it seems like God was putting little rams in the bush for you as your life was happening throughout that time period.
Absolutely.
So that's kind of cool to know that. Again, I always remind people who listen to the podcast and you listen to everybody's story that God has a plan, even in the midst of everything that we going through and things that matter. And it's very interesting that Coach Lindsay was there for you in middle school, because if she wasn't there, and I'm telling, if Coach Lindsay would have never been there, what do you think you would have ended up doing? Like,
oh my gosh, I don't know. I probably still would have been a teacher, or maybe, you know, Henry, when I grew up too, we didn't have the guidance counselors that gave us like career, you know, helped us with career choice. You were either a secretary, a teacher, or a nurse, or you know, just a stay-at-home, you know, mom or whatever. So, you know, I probably would have still been a teacher, because I used to play school, you know, all the time too. But after, you know, because I was involved in sports, I loved sports, and that's, you know, I do still to this day. I probably, you know, but it was just her nudging me and helping me. And then when I got to Lee, I met Betty Butler, and she was like, wow, you know, that was my second mentor. So,
wow.
And I still keep in touch with her as well too. So.
Yes, ma'am. So when you think about you love sports so much, like what's your favorite sport during that time period?
Oh, during that time period?
Yes,
ooh, probably football. You know, I'm a
you
huge.
like football for real?
You know, I do like football.
I know you like football now. But I'm saying back then, growing up, you really like football?
Oh, I did. I was a cheerleader, and that was my favorite sport to cheer for. My older brother played high school at Lee, and I tell you, he went to college before.
Oh, yeah. You've been saying with the Southern Miss, right?
Yeah, and then before my dad died. So, but now I've kind of branched out. I mean, I love baseball, but I'm more of like, I like to be there rather than watching it on TV. And I like to go to the Auburn games. Anything I can see in person is a whole lot more fun to me than watching it on TV.
Yes, ma'am. So the question I have to do about that time period, as I'm thinking about Coach Lindsay, there were not many female coaches at all around, were they?
No, just I mean, she was just the PE teacher, but she did coach softball, you know, and all too. So, but no, there wasn't a whole lot.
So how did that impact you guys? I mean, I'm sorry, you young ladies growing up during that time period, because you look at now, you see numerous amount of PE coaches or educators in the building that are in the physical education department that are females. How did that really impact, you know, growing up a young lady during a time period? Like you said, it was only like maybe 5 jobs that you probably was probably destined to go through during that time period. So how was it very important back then to have a positive female role model in the school system back then?
Well, I think seeing her interact with all the students, not just me, and what an impact and how she influenced so many young girls, it was like, you know, that meant a lot to me, because I'll never forget one thing she told us when we were playing basketball. She said, I want you to get out on that court and you play like a boy. You be as mean and tough as you did, but when you walk off that court, you're a young lady. And I'll never forget that. I'll never forget that. So, you know, hers wasn't just a coaching basketball; it was coaching life. You know, to me. So
that's good to hear. That's still good to hear that. You know, again, throughout our lives, we have people that step in and help us in certain areas, and also give us that encouragement that we need in some of those time periods where we seem like we may have that. So you find yourself leaving Capitol Heights, And then you find yourself at
The big Robert E. Lee High School.
okay, Robert E. Lee High School.
Oh, goodness.
So I just want to stop everybody know that I'm a poet at heart. So go Poets.
I know. We've had this conversation before.
So go Poets for everybody who's out there listening. So, but I still gonna sit and let Mama Daisy talk about her great high school days at Robert E. Lee High School. So how was going to Robert E. Lee High School?
It was fabulous. It was a tough time too, though. A lot of things were starting to creep into our culture that had an effect on young people. Drugs and alcohol, and teen pregnancy and everything. So it was really a time where I had to really do some soul searching, and it was at that time that I accepted Christ, thanks to a Sunday school teacher. And
oh wow!
And so that helped me make decisions, that I was going to be faced with. I kind of learned to go ahead and set my boundaries and my standards, so when those circumstances came up, I would be able to say no. So
what were some of the things that were influencing your generation back then that caused those things, like you said, to creep into you guys' culture? What are some things that were influencing y'all?
Like I said, I think it had a lot to do with the drugs and the alcohol too. And I think more then too, you had these bands coming out and more movies coming out that were, an influence, like promoting use of drugs and alcohol and teenage sex, too.
So are you really saying rock and roll had an influence on your generation?
Yeah.
I'm being honest, because I always see the movies and people, you see the parents like, I'm not going to let my child listen to rock and roll, blah, 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 and all the Bible people saying it was wrong, things that matter. So you're really genuinely saying that rock and roll really had that much influence? It
did, but I didn't care for the hard rock and roll, though, the heavy metal. I didn't like it at all. My brother listened to it, and I didn't care for it. I was more the mellow kind,
So give me an example of a mellow kind.
I loved Elton John.
Okay.
Still do. I was trying to think who else was very popular there. You won't even know who these people are. Henry Herman's Hermits and Paul Revere and the Raiders. So you don't even know them. So, and I loved Motown too. I was a big Diana Ross, the Supremes, Drifters.
Okay.
Yeah. I wanted something I could sing and dance to.
All those are pretty good music, though.
Yeah.
That's pretty good music.
I still listen to it today.
Yes, ma'am. So that's pretty good music. So how old when you gave your life to the Lord then?
I was probably around 15, 16.
Oh, so you got saved at 15 years old.
Yeah. I mean, I'd always been in church, and I knew about God. My mother had made sure. But it wasn't until I really got older that I understood that I needed a relationship. I didn't need to just know about Him. I needed to know Him. And so I remember getting on my knees with my Sunday school teacher at her house, and I asked God to come into my life. And so, like I said, I still made bad decisions in high school. I wasn't a goody-goody for sure.
Oh, for sure.
But I think if I had not been grounded and had those people around me, it scares me to even think how it would have turned out.
So a 15, 16-year-old gives her life totally to the Lord when it seems like everything around you is going crazy.
Yeah.
I always say this too. I think a lot of times how a child views God is how they view their father. So during this time period of being 15 and 16-year-old, what made you think, I guess, away from religion to more of a relationship? Like, what caused you to be like, I really know about God, I've heard about Him, we've been in church all this time, but now I really want this relationship. Like, what caused that to happen?
Well, like I said, I think it was my Sunday school teacher's influence.
What's her name?
Her name was Jane Aragai.
Say that.
Jane Aragai.
Okay.
And, she opened up her home every night, every day of the week. I think back now, I thought, sometimes she probably wanted to, like, when we rang the doorbell, she's like, y'all need to go home. I need some time with myself. Yeah. But she always did. She opened up her home, and she was a big influence on a small group of my friends that we were in Sunday school together. And, she never turned us down, never turned her back on us.
Wow. So this Morning View or Highland Gardens?
This was Morning View.
So this Morning View Baptist.
Yeah. Now, I was at Highland Avenue Baptist, then Morning View. And I changed to Morning View when I got in junior high because a lot of the people that I met in junior high went to Morning View.
Oh, and when you was at Capitol Heights.
Yeah. And I think it kind of hurt my mother, but my mother was like, as long as you're in church,
Did your mom go to Morning View
no,
too after that?
she stayed at Highland Avenue. Mm-hmm.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So Sunday she would go to Highland and then you would go to Morning View?
Mm-hmm.
Wow. So I had that question about that too, because sometimes I still drive through that neighborhood. I have a young man that I mentor that stays on Midway right now.
That's Highland Gardens.
Yes, ma'am.
I went to Highland Avenue. off of
Okay.
Mount Meigs and Highland Avenue.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
So what I was bringing that up is the fact of it is those churches were so close back then.
Yes.
So why were they so close back then like that?
I couldn't answer that one.
Because like every mile there was a church that was a Baptist church, like every mile or whatever. So it's not like it was 5-10 miles away. Like every time you took a turn, it was a Baptist church.
But there were small churches too, though. They weren't, Yarber Street Baptist and Highland Avenue. Highland Gardens. They're small churches. They weren't your big church like Morning View and some of the Delray and some of the others. So.
Oh, so they were more centered toward more of a community neighborhood scenario.
Exactly.
then. Okay. So let's go way back. We're back in high school now. You said things are going kind of crazy, but at the same time, you were trying your best to make the best decisions that you could make during that time period. Give me some good memories you had in high school, though.
I hate to keep bringing up football, but that was one of my best memories because during that day, that was Lee's heyday. They were winning state championships and everything. So
Were they like losing to Lanier, or Lanier was
I'm
beating
sure
them?
they were smoking Lanier.
Oh my God.
Yeah, I'm sure they were beating them bad.
Because there's no way that Lee can be good during that time period, or Lanier not be good during that time period either. So that's the reason I'm asking that question. So, because I always remember by me knowing history like I do, in order for Lee to get to those championship games, they had to beat Lanier, right?
Yes.
Okay. So let's go through those memories of that, because I used to always read these stories that the Lanier Lee games were like the biggest games ever in the city during that time period.
Absolutely.
So give me some memories of that.
Well, if I can go back even further, my oldest brother played ball at Lee during 60 and 61 in those years. And you're talking about it being a big game. You didn't go to the game that night and buy your ticket. You had to go to Patterson Field weeks in advance and stand in a long line to get a ticket to get into Crampton Bowl.
So you had to go weeks in advance to get a game.
It's like going to a college game. You didn't just walk up to, like you don't walk up to Auburn or Alabama and buy a ticket at the gate. You had to get these tickets in advance, and you had to stand in line. It was a hot commodity.
So during that time period, that was the game of the year.
Oh, absolutely. You didn't have Jeff Davis, and
Yes,
some
ma'am.
of those
It was only those two major high schools then during that time.
And I'm not sure when Carver was built, so I don't know.
Carver was still around, but BTW was their rival.
Okay.
BTW was their rival. So
Yeah.
that's why I want you to bring that up, because so many times in today's world, we don't understand how big of that game was when it was only a couple of high schools here in the city. So people would have to go weeks and weeks in advance
Yes,
just to get that ticket.
just to get that
and,
hot
it,
ticket.
and it had to be around like November during that time period.
Probably so, I would think. I'm not sure about the time because I was only 6 and 7 years old, at that time.
So during that time period, that was a big game for you then.
Well, it was because my brother played, too.
So outside of football, what are some other good memories you had in high school?
Well, I will say too, I had a group of friends that I got very close with, and you probably see now, even to this day, we're coming up on our, I forgot how many years it is, 40 something. I don't want to go there, but there are 8 of us that graduated together from Lee
cool.
that ran together, and to this day we started about 8 years ago, and we get together once a month
That
and
is
see each
so
other.
cool.
And we call ourselves the REL Babes.
The RLL Babes.
The Robert E. Lee Babes of 74.
So how's that been, though, still keeping that group together even now throughout the years?
That's awesome. It's a wonderful group of Christian women. We're prayer warriors for each other. We're there during the good times, the bad times. And, people are amazed that 8 women that graduated, that many, it'll be 50 years.
Oh, wow.
That are still together. Like I said, we didn't start to get together until about 8 years ago. But yeah, and so some of us are married, some are divorced, some are widows, and like I said, we've been there through all the good times and the bad times.
So that's a blessing. So that's a blessing within itself when you think about that. Because, how I love history. I would love to, come to one of y'all things and, pick everybody's brains, because you realize there's not many people around that can really talk about those days that you have been talking about during that time period of Montgomery. So it's a blessing, I think, that all of y'all still get together and still have that great relationship with each other.
Yeah, but FYI, we don't let any guys in our group.
I'm sorry to hear that, Dan.
Yeah, sorry, Henry.
Sorry to hear that. So you end up doing well in high school. You have these great memories. What put you in the direction of AUM during that time period? What are some other schools that you thought about going to?
Well, again, it came to the point where I didn't have the parental guidance and and people to say, these are your options,
Mm-hmm.
And it was a big financial thing, of course, too. I couldn't go away to college because, we couldn't afford it. So I had to stay at home and go to AUM at that time.
So AUM, we look at it now compared to back then. Give me some differences between now and back then.
Wow, a lot. For one thing, AUM at that time was more of people like me or adults that, were middle-aged or 30ish or whatever, and they were there just to go to school. There was no college life.
Social life at all.
None at all. There were no dorms, there were no fraternities, no sororities, nothing, And people were there literally to get their degrees, get out of class, go home, and so they could go to work or, whatever, take care of their families. So there was no campus life, hardly. I was blessed, though, that I got a work study. I was able to get a grant.
That's cool.
Excuse me. And so I got a work study, and I worked for the basketball coach.
Oh, man. So you still was around sports?
I still was around sports.
You still around sports still?
Still around sports. So I worked for him, while I went to school. So, and I look back now and think I would have loved to have gone to Troy. I don't know that I would have gone to Auburn. It might have been a little big, but Troy would have been a great fit.
Yeah,
for me.
Go Troy Trojans.
Go Troy Trojans. That's my money's there twice for both my children.
So go Troy Trojans. So you end up going to AUM, which is very convenient for you during that time period due to different circumstances and things that matter. You end up finishing in what degree?
I had a Bachelor of Science in Elementary Physical Education.
Bachelor of Science in Elementary Education. So that goes all the way back to Ms. Coach
there
Lindsay.
You go.
Right?
It goes back to Diane Lindsay and Betty Butler.
Yes, ma'am. So you graduate from AUM. What's your first job?
Highland Gardens Elementary.
Oh.
Hey, I stay in the 36107, 36109 zip code, okay?
So you full circle.
Full circle.
So where was Coach Lindsay when you got your first job there?
I was trying to remember. She may have retired by then. I'm not 100% sure.
Did you call her and let her know that you were
Oh, absolutely. She knew.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, what did she say?
Oh, she was excited, loved it. So.
Okay, so you find yourself back in your old stomping grounds.
Right. Now, I graduated I went to Highland Avenue, and my job was at Highland Gardens.
Mm-hmm.
So I was two different, places.
But you're really like in the same world.
Oh,
though.
absolutely.
Yeah, same
We're
world.
just across Madison Avenue is the only thing that separates
Yes,
us.
ma'am. So when you think about that, your first job, like, you were excited, right?
Oh, thrilled that I got a PE job.
Okay. So I just want to ask this question because, so many people in today's world don't understand teaching back then to now from a financial standpoint. So tell us how much your first
When I got my contract, I thought, there's no way I can spend this much money. I thought, I'm going to be rich. I've made $10,400 a year.
So
I thought, how am I going to spend $10,000 a year?
You made $10,000 a year.
Yes, sir.
Your first year teaching.
Absolutely.
Oh my God. If you told a teacher right now, like, you're gonna get paid $10,000 to start teaching right now,
that's probably about what I make now at Fraser.
Don't say that. Don't say that.
No,
Don't
I
say
didn't. Well, I don't work. I just work part time though. So.
But wow, that is amazing that starting off back then, $10,000 was like the best thing ever for you back then teaching.
Mm-hmm.
So let's go to, like, just from that pay standpoint, you're starting out. What did you end on then?
Gosh, Henry, I can't remember. It was in the high 20s or so. Probably.
Okay, so there was an increase over the years.
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So starting off, you started elementary school. Like, what are some memories you have from your first year teaching that was like shocking or very joyful at the same time?
A little bit of both. I was scared to death. It was a little bit of a culture shock, even though I had grown up, around that area and everything. It was hard because some of the kids were hard, and I'll be honest with you. They were coming from Newtown and Kings Hill and Dixie Court and all, and in the Highland Gardens area, and a lot of them were very street smart. And they were raising their younger siblings. There was no daddy in the picture, and the mom. I can remember I used to have to do breakfast duty. It made me so mad. They'd come in there, I don't like this. And I thought, well, get your mom to get up and fix you something. Well, my mom was not even home.
Oh, wow.
So, and me being the softy I am, it didn't take long. I thought, these kids need a mama.
Yeah.
They just need somebody to be consistent with them, to love them, be consistent discipline-wise. And, I could not, one of my own children asked me one time, Mama, when do your kids go and pray and read the Bible? I said, sweetie, we don't. We can't do that. But I always said, so I just told them, I said, I have to show them God through my actions.
Mm-hmm.
I have to let them know that I'm a Christian woman, a godly woman. And, I always told them, anything you hear me say, you can say. And I said, if you don't hear it come out of my mouth, you don't use it,
So is that that's great encouragement to a lot of people, I guess believers in the world now who in the education field that say, well, I can't really share my faith, I can't really talk about God, I can't really read my Bible, things that matter because of the world that we stand in now. But just by you sharing that is really about how you live your life.
Exactly.
That people will see Christ in you. So that's very encouraging to anybody out there who's in the education field or even thinking about getting in the education field. Like, you can still walk out your life that people see that light in you.
Absolutely.
To know that there's something different about you. So even that being said too, from a culture standpoint, you begin to see a large amount of your students were coming from very broken homes, broken environments, and things of that matter. So what encouraged you from your life by seeing their lives that great things could still come out of them?
Well, I mean, my life at home was not bad. It wasn't. I didn't see the things. I was not abused. There was no alcohol. There was no abandonment or anything. But in a way, I could relate to them too. It was a struggle. Life was a struggle, and I thought they need to know that somebody loves them and there is hope.
Yes, ma'am.
And so, there were times I would share, that I grew up from a one-parent home. But I promised myself that I would get myself out of that situation, and I would make a living for myself and a home for my, home for a family. And I wanted them to see that same thing too, that, it's possible.
Yes, ma'am.
You don't have to have, if you don't have money, there's ways to go to school. There's ways to do things,
yes, ma'am.
And Henry, I truly believe education is the answer to the crime and everything else in our city. If you can't read and write, you can't do anything.
Yes, ma'am.
And the only thing you know to do is to cheat and steal.
Yes, ma'am.
So, I think it was that I could relate to them very easily.
And I just want to bring it up because a lot of times you see teachers that go into environments, educators that go into environments, they're like, man, I can't relate at all. Or I don't know, these kids know stuff I don't know, they're experiencing things but you are really a testament that not only that you can sometimes have things in common, but you can let Christ use you to be a light in a very dark place.
Absolutely.
So it's always encouraging to hear that a lot of people sometimes feel like they can't be those things, but you are a testament that you can be in an environment and look at somebody that may not look like you, but you can let Christ shine through you to impact their lives too. So that's very encouraging to hear you say that.
And also too, I mean, Highland Gardens was predominantly black, maybe like 60% black, 40% white or whatever. And you know me, Henry, you and I have had a wonderful relationship, and obviously you're black and I'm white.
Yes, ma'am.
That's never made a difference in our relationship. Never had. I always tell everybody you're my son,
yes, ma'am.
And I looked at those children, that's what I'm saying, I felt like they needed a mother. And I love those little black boys just as much as I loved my own children.
Yes, ma'am.
And I love the little girls too. And when you hug them or just tell them they're worth something, you can just feel them melt in your arms.
Yes, ma'am.
Like, man, somebody really does care.
Yes, ma'am.
And like I said, having a constant person who disciplines them, they knew their boundaries, and they were thriving on it. They were so hungry for somebody to love them in that way as well too.
Yes,
ma'am. So and even to this day, when I see kids out, in the community and everything, and it's so good to see them, see them doing well, and and those that have thrived. Of course, not all of them did.
Yes, ma'am.
Some of them are making car tags, but there's a lot of success stories, in that too.
So out of the years, how often have you got a chance to come across some of your former students?
Pretty often.
Pretty often?
Yeah, and now I have grandsons that play ball. I ran into one this past year that I taught, and he was coaching my grandson.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and it was like, oh my goodness, and he's a firefighter, and I thought, wow, that really did my heart good.
That's good. That's good, because I think even knowing that in the work that we do, sometimes we see the current reality of what we're in, and we're like, man, is they ever going to do better? Are they really listening to me?
Yeah.
Are they really looking at what I'm doing and things that matter? But I always encourage people, like, over time, God has a way of doing those things, of reminding us of his faithfulness, reminding us that our life is worthy and that our life does have importance and the people that we're interacting with every day. So it's very encouraging to know that from time to time you get those reminders again that it wasn't in vain, those things that you were trying to do.
I'm very proud of my teaching career. I take a lot of pride in it. I enjoyed it, and it just does my heart good to see see them. I work here at Fraser with the youth now. I've got youth that I taught their parents. So, I've even had staff members, that I taught. So, it's fun. It's good to look back.
So how long were you at Highland Gardens?
20 years. I taught 3 years in Mobile, and then 20. I started at Highland Gardens, went to Mobile for about 2 or 3 years, and came back, and the job at Highland Gardens was open again, and I finished out my career there.
Oh, wow. So what's the total amount of years you was at Highland Gardens then?
20 probably, around 20.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you were there for 20 plus years. No other school at all.
Well, I was saying I went to Mobile
you
and
went to
taught.
Mobile, and then
taught,
you came back. So that's really probably 2 generations, probably 3 now, of people that you've had impact on and things of that matter.
Yeah.
So you find yourself retiring. What put you into a mindset of retiring from Highland Gardens?
Well, because I always said I wanted to retire while I still liked what I did. There's too many people that are teaching just to draw a paycheck, and I said, I believe God wants me to do something else, and I don't want to leave this place with bad feelings and resenting my job. So I thought it's time to get my tennis shoes and go home. And I thought God was probably calling me to do something else. And I look back now, it was crazy because my son graduated from high school, was going to Troy the next year, and what do? I retire and take a cut in pay.
Yes, well.
But God had a plan. And I told you earlier, my mother had been sick most of our life, and I had helped take care of my grandmother. And it was at that point that I found my second calling. And that was to help elderly people. And so I've been a caregiver since 2006.
Yes, ma'am. So we're going to get into that before we end the day, too, though. But you find yourself, you're retired, your son is going off to Troy. What happens after that?
I didn't know.
You didn't know at all?
I didn't know what I was going to do. I didn't have a plan at all. And so I was volunteering here at Fraser. My daughter was in the youth group at that time. So I got real involved here. And so I was doing, like I said, a lot of volunteer work with small groups. And then they hired a new pastor.
Okay.
And you know what I'm fixing to say there. So when this guy came in, I invited him to breakfast one morning and made him pigs in a blanket and chocolate milk.
Oh, wow.
And he wanted to know all about the different areas because I was so involved and I could kind of help him. And I was telling him I was kind of the leader of the life groups and, coordinated the life groups. And at the end of breakfast, Brian Word said, "Why don't you come work for me and get paid for what you do?" And I said, "Thank you, Jesus."
Oh, wow.
That was it. It gives me chills now. And, of course, Brian Word.
Yeah.
And so I said...
Shout out to Brian Word.
Yeah, shout out to my sunshine. So I did. I was ready. He was coming in about a month or two, and I came on, and the rest was history. I've been here almost 17 years now doing this.
Oh, wow. So I'm just thinking in my head because, I'm always trying to tie God into everything that happens in our lives. So you're serving, and by your serving, you're rewarded for your serving.
I was rewarded with my service.
So that's a blessing right there.
Absolutely. Still working with youth, and I'll be honest with you, it was easier parents.
Yes, ma'am.
Parents were a huge, I don't want to say problem. What was this? Parents can be tough.
Yes, ma'am.
And it really got tough when I decided to retire too. So, so I thought I can still work with kids. I can talk to them about God. I can pray with them. I can read the Bible. And I got this man, Brian Word, who's just, one of the most fantastic dynamic men I've ever met.
Yes, ma'am.
And of course, what happened with you, here comes Henry Tellis.
Nah.
So I came to work. But also at that time too, and you said we would do it later, I started caring for elderly people on the side, a little bit too. So I came to work in the youth office with Brian Word as his assistant.
So how has that been? Like, from all those years from then to now, being continued? Because, I'm really trying to be really politically correct by saying this, but I think you have been here longer than anybody when you think about it from a staff standpoint here at the church, right?
Well, there's a few ladies that have been here longer, but for sure I'm the youth department because, that's why I said it.
Because this has been changing a lot, but I just know since I have been here at Fraser,
Yeah.
You've been that consistent point of contact.
Well, I'm one of the older ones for sure. Yeah, but somebody laughed one day because they were looking at all the pictures on my cabinet behind it, and had every Christmas they would take a picture of the youth staff, and they said, "Why is it different people every year? But you're in every one of them. I said, well, honey, if you can't stand the heat, then get out of the kitchen. so I ran them off. Not really.
No, you didn't.
But people move on. They grow, and then opportunities come. And so with Brian, then Brian left, and then in came Chase Falk, and stole my heart immediately. Drove me crazy.
Yes, ma'am.
He stole my heart. And he was here a couple of years, and I loved working with him. And then he moved back to Dothan, and then Tyler Grant came in just a few years ago.
Yes, ma'am.
Was going to retire when Chase left, and then
Oh, wow. I didn't know that.
yeah, that was my plan. Was in 2022 I was going. 2020 I was going to retire.
Oh, wow. I never knew that.
Yeah, and then Tyler came in, and nobody was here but me and Tyler.
During the COVID scenario.
Well, right before that, and so
Because we didn't have no female person at that time, did we?
no, had nobody.
Oh.
Yeah.
I never thought about that.
Well, we did have two, but I'm saying they left not too long after that, and I thought I can't leave this guy here
By himself.
by
like
himself. I mean, I may be slow and old, but I do have a lot of knowledge in my head from
Yes, ma'am.
about the youth, and been an administrator, for so many years. So I said, I couldn't leave him, and so best decision I ever made.
Oh, wow.
So I tell them all the time, okay, when I age out, y'all need to let me know, and I'll go home. Or I get here and my key won't unlock the door. I'll be like, they're like, okay, it's time for her to leave. So, Henry, though, I don't know what I'd do if I retire. I'd go home, or I'd have to find something else to do. Why leave what you love doing
Yes, ma'am.
to go find something you may not like?
Yes, ma'am.
And the kids keep me young. Oh my gosh, I love them to death.
Yes, ma'am.
Being Mama Daisy to, hundreds and hundreds of kids, just fills my heart with so much joy, so much joy.
So let's go over that scenario.
Oh, Lordy, here we go.
So we know Kathy Boyd, but where does Mama Daisy come from? For everybody who has that question out there, who's listening to this podcast, is like, he's talking to Mama Daisy, but I never heard nobody call her Kathy Boyd before. So where does Mama Daisy come from? Give everybody that history of that,
okay.
because everybody can finally know where that comes from.
Well, somebody asked me one day, was it from Daisy Dukes? And I said, yeah, right.
Somebody asked you that for real?
For real.
Oh, man.
It was a pastor's wife.
You been for real? Oh, wow.
Years ago, before I even started working, when I was volunteering, I was on a trip with a group, with a youth group up in Tennessee, and I was riding in a go-kart with one of my friends, and she was driving crazy, and so I was hooping and hollering, and so when I got out, the student pastor then asked her, said, did you feel like you were driving Miss Daisy?
Oh.
And so she turned to me and she said, Daisy, Miss Daisy. So it started out as Miss Daisy. Then when I came on with the youth department, Brian Word said, no, it's Mama Daisy.
Wow.
So, and it's funny today, even today this happened. One of the students was up in her office and saw my name, and she said, I never knew your name was Kathy. I thought it was really Daisy.
Wow.
So if you ask the youth here who's Kathy Boyd, they'll be
They
like,
have no idea who that is.
No idea at all.
So Brian Word gave you the Mama Daisy name.
Mm-hmm. And now, kind of like you and everybody else, a lot of them is just Mama.
Yeah.
So I always said everybody needs a mama.
Yes,
Everywhere
ma'am.
you go, everybody needs a mama.
So now everybody there officially knows how the Mama Daisy name came around. So,
Right.
so it's Kathy Boyd, but I think when it's time for Mama Daisy to go beat the Lord, they're going to put Mama Daisy on there because everybody know where to find her. Because you put Kathy Boyd, it's like, who is that? I don't know who that is.
What they do with her?
So that's cool now that we officially know Mama Daisy when it comes to that.
Yeah, and I love being Mama Daisy.
Yes, ma'am. And we're glad that you are a mama to so many of us and so many youth and so many adults at that, too, that maybe need that mother, that grandmother kind of figure also.
Yeah.
So that's a blessing.
I'm
even
sitting
that.
across from one of them right now.
Yes, ma'am. Hey, no doubt about that at all. I never deny that. So when you think about the part when you talking about being a caregiver, you said growing up as a child, you had to really do a lot of that. Did you think that as an adult that you would be doing it now, though?
No. Never did. I tell you how I actually came across it was before I got the job here. A friend of mine asked me could I take her mother to the doctor, one day, and because she had to work, and I said sure. So I dropped her off over here at Eastdale Estates, right over here by the mall. It's a senior facility, a living facility. And when I opened the door, there sat my mother's best friend.
Wow.
And I said, I have found the golden egg. because I had been to her house. My mother, I tell you, passed away.
Mhm.
This lady lived next door to us when we were growing up, and my mother didn't drive. She took us to church, took us to get groceries, did everything. Well, I had tried to find her at her home, and she was never there.
Oh, for real?
Her car was there, but she was never there. And I thought, I didn't know what happened to her. And when I opened that door to East Dallas Estates, and there she sat, that's when I said I found the golden egg. Not too long after that, her son, who lived in California, she was the only child she had, said, hey, Mom said that she saw you, and she said, would you be interested in helping her out? Said she needs somebody
Oh,
with her
wow.
medicine, helping her get dressed, to just, help her get her day kind of jump started.
Yes, ma'am.
And I said, well, I hadn't thought about that, but we'll give it a try. And so she and I laughed. 6 years later, we were still trying to figure out if it was going to work. And I got started, and I stayed with her till she passed away. And then after that, God always gave me just a couple months, and then the phone would ring, and somebody said, hey, I need help with my mom. Are you available?
Wow.
And now I've probably been doing it since '06, so 17 years, and I've probably had 10 or 12 different, people that I've cared for. And I absolutely love this, what God has called me to do, besides being with the
Yes, ma'am.
youth.
So it goes back to the point where she used to drive y'all around because your mom didn't drive. Then in her last stages of life, you really took care of her.
Yeah.
So that is just amazing, again, how I consistently remind everybody that life is all about cycles and circles and things of that matter. But in the
Yeah.
process of that, God is like preparing us for things, or he's putting us in a position to serve others, or while others are serving us, and then we find ourselves serving them again in
Yeah.
the future, things of that matter.
Absolutely.
So that's very amazing that she served you guys in that process of helping y'all transportation, and then she just went missing, and then all of a sudden you come across her.
Well, God put her there. She
Yes,
really
ma'am.
wasn't missing.
Yes, ma'am.
It's just it was God's timing when he said, this is it.
So how is that though, from I guess from a mental standpoint or spiritual standpoint, that a large amount of times you're helping people who are elderly. Some can take care of themselves, some cannot. You've seen some transition and things of that matter. Like, how's all that been for you though?
It's a wonderful job. I don't want to call it a job. It's just a calling to do. But it's tough at the end, and I've never quit on anybody. I've always told them I would stay with them to their last
Yes,
breath.
ma'am.
And I've been with several of them at their last breath. And it's like, if you got a toddler gets better, learns to walk, learns to feed themselves, learns to become potty trained. An adult goes that completely opposite, because usually at the end they're completely dependent on your care.
Yes, ma'am.
And but I always said I treat them like I would want somebody to treat my mother.
Yes, ma'am.
And Henry, they deserve our respect. They have put their time in, their love in, their hard work, and they deserve to be treated, with dignity.
Yes, ma'am.
And so I try to make sure, that it happens. And it's hard on the families too, because a lot of them, that may be the first parent they lost or something, and you walk them through those, through those times too. And you have to tell them it's okay to go up to their hospital bed and say, hey, I'm going to be okay. It's time for you to go. When God calls you, you go.
Yes, ma'am.
Because I've seen a lot of people that I've cared for that hung on for the family.
Oh,
wow. They were not ready to let go until the family said, hey,
It's okay.
it's okay. So, and I cry with them. They become family to me.
Yes, ma'am.
I have so many mamas now, and we just honored a man today that was retiring here from Fraser, and I took care of his mother, and brought tears to my eyes. He just thanked me for, I stayed with her. I kept her for 5.5 years, and he
Wow.
just said, thank you for what you did for my mother, So I love that calling. I love the young ones, and I love the old ones.
Yes, ma'am.
Anything in between, nah. You're in that class. Right
So
there.
I'm in a bad position right now in life there.
Yep, that's it, Henry.
So when you think about it long term, when you think about how much you impacted people's lives in so many different ways, and just those different genres, or like you said, the young people and the older people, what do you think like your lifelong legacy will be when you go and see Jesus face to face? What do you think that we will always want to remember you for, or do you want people to always remember you for?
For my family, I want to be in kind of here too at Fraser. I was a glue that kind of held them together. I would love that, for the older people that I made their final days, one of great blessing and happiness, and
Yes,
not something they regretted, doing.
Wow.
So, and I pray too. I tell you, Henry, I said I don't worry, because God said that tells me don't worry, but I have concerns, and I do have a concern that one day I may be in that position, and I don't
Yes,
want to
ma'am.
be that way.
Yes,
I don't
ma'am.
want somebody to come change me and feed me and bathe me. I don't want that for my children. I just hope, and I tell my kids, if I just don't wake up one day, just say she died the way she wanted to go.
Yes, ma'am.
And I'm having that talk with God.
ma'am.
We're pretty tight. So I'm saying, listen here, God.
Yes, ma'am.
So, but I just hope that they'll say she loved well.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
So that's want to be your legacy that she loved well.
Yeah.
That's good. That's good.
Yeah.
So one last thing I want to talk to you about
Oh,
is
Lordy.
no, stop.
Okay.
Being a grandmother.
Oh, I talk that all day.
So how has being a grandmother really changed things for you, or like changed your life in such a way? Like how has that like really impacted you? Because you've always been around young people. You've always been around us for like 15 plus years. So you've always been around from like, let's say 12 to 18 or something like that.
Yeah.
But now you've had a chance to hold one of your arms and now see them grow into that almost that teenage age themselves. Like, so how has being a grandmother been to you?
Well, my joke is, if I'd have known how fun grandmothers do, I'd have done that first and skipped having the kids. So, and Henry, you know how much I love my grandchildren, how
Yes,
involved I am with them, with their sports, their dance, everything they do. I have them from 2 years old to 14 years old now, and I had all 5 of them at my house Friday.
Oh,
And
wow. How was that, though, from 2 to 14, though?
You wouldn't believe how much they love. And the 14, I have 14, 12, 10, 4, and 2.
Wow.
And the older ones absolutely love the little ones, and the little ones adore the older ones. They play together. My 14-year-old, I won't say his name because I don't want anybody to know who he, he'll get down on the floor and play dolls. He'll play, dress up, with them. Oh, you just wouldn't believe it. It does my heart so much good. I'm the happiest I ever am when I say all my chicks are under my roof.
Oh, wow.
So, and I'm so proud of them. The oldest one has made it to the World Series in Dixie Youth Baseball and won, and the other ones won championships. In football, and my oldest granddaughter won state in gymnastics, and of course the little ones are the 4 and the 2-year-old are coming along. But oh man, it makes my heart just bust open with pride.
So that's kind of again goes back to the scenario you growing up as a child loving sports and being a cheerleader and things that matter. So now you have your grandchildren that are like just in the same path or really falling in love with those sports things that matter. So how does that make you feel that? Because they could have went the other way. They could have been like, I want chess or I want to, do something else. But how does that make you feel also knowing that they have that athletic passion, that passion to be great athletics also?
Well, I would support them no matter what they did, but boy, I'm glad they chose sports. So, it is. There's nothing makes me, feel so proud to just sit up in the stands and watch them. And my son is coached. My son has coached several. He coached the World Series team that won the championship, and that was probably the proudest moment of my life for him. Not him playing. He's had his time playing, but to see my son coach my grandson and win.
Wow, that is a blessing.
Oh my goodness, I cried all the way home from Louisiana.
Wow.
So it does. It just does you good. And and they're forming that community too. They're meeting these boys and these families, and they're making those friendships that are going to last them a lifetime. You've got friends that you've played ball with that you're still close to. You've got to get plugged in somewhere. So, but to watch my kids perform and do well, they're all good students. So
Yes, ma'am.
I've been blessed. And they're all healthy, and I have a big picture in my den that they gave me. It was all of them together.
Oh, wow.
And so it hangs in there, and every morning when I do my small group, my quiet time, and I read, one of the first things I look up those pictures and I say, God, thank you for those blessings. And then I also say, God, please protect them from this world. Just please watch over and protect. But let them be good, godly men and women. And, I know you're preparing them for marriage. You've got somebody in mind. But I pray over those children every day.
That's a blessing.
Yeah, because it's a hard world they're
Yes,
going to
ma'am.
see.
Yes, ma'am.
So,
last thing.
oh, goodness.
Just spend like 30 seconds to a minute just sharing what's on your heart, like wisdom toward anybody who's listening to this podcast. Like, what wisdom do you have for them? No matter where they may be in life, they may be 12, they may be 15, they may be 25, they may be 30, they may be 60, they may be 70. What wisdom do you have for them, or people who listen to the podcast right now?
Well, I would tell anybody, get your life right with the Lord.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if you're not right with God, you know, we didn't know we were going to wake up today.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so make the most of every day, because this may be the last one. And Pastor Chris preached Sunday on that too. If there's somebody you need to make amends with, you need to do it now. You know, because they may not be here tomorrow. You may not be here tomorrow. But just live every day like it's your last, but always put God first before you do anything. And the rest of it, you know, there's nothing God won't that you won't be put through that God can't help you get through, you know. And I have a little card on my mirror, my makeup mirror. It says, don't tell God how big the storm is, tell the storm how big God is.
That's cool.
And that's what I live by. There's no
cool.
storm. And you know, too, we didn't go into it, but that's fine, that I've had some storms in my life.
Yes, ma'am.
You know, but, you know, I've come through them, and I'm a better person. And now God has let me mentor to people that have been through, you know, some of the things. And I have Big O Henry people like Big O Henry Tellis that I can call in the middle of the night, or call him from downtown and tell him I'm at the Biscuits game. It's like, do I need to come down there? Are you okay?
Yes, ma'am. I'll be there as soon as you call me. You know, I'll be there as quick as possible.
I know. I called you one night. And you said, where are you? Are you okay? And I was going, I'm fine, Henry. I just wanted to ask you a question. So,
Yes, ma'am.
but, you know, God, I really think because of what the storms I have been through, that God said, you know, He's put some women in my life that have experienced that the last 5 years. And it was like turning on a switch. I was like, this is why I went through it, because God needed to use me to help some women that are doing the same thing. So,
That is so cool.
Yeah.
So I just want to thank you for being on the podcast today. I hope you enjoyed being on 4116 West Smiley.
Yeah.
And more than anything, I just want to remind everybody that Mrs. Kathy Boyd, Mama Daisy's life, is again a testament to my favorite scripture, Jeremiah 29:11, that God has a plan in all things. And in spite of things maybe looking in your life right now, just, you know, go back and listen to this podcast and listen to, you know, a lot of things that Mama Daisy said today. You know, her life is a testament that God was mapping out things for her life even when she didn't even know it. And He was putting her in positions to impact other people's lives. So I just want to thank you, Mama Daisy, for your heart, for letting God use you, and also for God having a purpose and a plan for your life, because it impacted my life and other people's lives too.
Yeah.
So again, today is a reminder again of God's faithfulness, not only toward my life, but your life too, and that all of our lives has a purpose and a plan. So thank you for being on today's podcast, and thank you so much for being a servant of God.
Yeah. Well, Henry, you know that you have a special place in my heart since we met in the youth group years ago. And so when I count my blessings, I count you twice, buddy.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you
I
so
love
much.
you, sweetie.
Love you too.
All right.
All right.
Okay.